Going the distance with local sports. This is the X Sports Network.
Here at Fields & Brown Barbershop, legacy means a lot. We're trying to fill big shoes left by my two uncles and my grandfather, where every haircut came with conversation and every customer left a little taller than when they walked in. The barbershop is about pride. It's about knowing your barber knows your name and your story. Come see us at Fields & Brown Barbershop, where tradition never goes out of style. 3 generations, 1 legacy, your barbershop.
Make your lawn a legacy. At Legacy Lawn and Landscapes, we put more than 16 years of experience into your goals. We won't meet your expectations, we'll exceed them. We offer consultation, installation, maintenance, hardscapes, construction, and land clearing services. Owner John and Jamie Brewer with their team are dedicated to providing the highest quality landscape services to commercial and residential clients in Middle Tennessee. Service, teamwork, results. That's how you leave a legacy.
Shop McMaster's Home Gallery for furniture, appliances, and more. And shop quality, shop convenience, shop service, shop local. A family-owned business with a long history of serving the region. We're a one-stop home furnishings destination. We feature brands you know, competitively priced, backed by professional installation and service. You can trust that we'll take good care of you before and after the sale. For your home, shop smart. Shop McMaster's Home Gallery today.
Going the distance with local sports. This is the X Sports Network.
And welcome in everybody here to the Mark My Words College Sports Show here on the X Sports Network. I'm your host Michael Marks, and we have a big week 9 of college football to break down, and we'll start right in the ACC. A game on Friday night, Virginia Tech getting the win over Cal 42-34 in double overtime, an absolute thriller in that one. Virginia Tech was favored, and I don't know, I just had a good feeling about it going into it. Just Cal had kind of been on the way down, and Virginia Tech, on the contrary, had been playing much better since the firing of Brent Key, and they were able to get a big one in overtime there. Cal, though, got out to a big lead. It was 20-10 at halftime. Very slow second quarter for Virginia Tech, but were able to get it going in the second half, continue it into overtime, and get a big win. Kyron Drones was fantastic, 9 of 18 through the air, 119 yards and 3 touchdowns. On the ground, 21 carries, 137 yards and 2 touchdowns. Marcellus Hawkins had a great game on the ground as well for Virginia Tech. He had 167 rushing yards on 21 carries. Terrion Stewart, 14 carries for 48 yards. So 58 carries for 357 yards and 2 touchdowns. Virginia Tech knew what they were going to do. They were going to pound the ball, and Cal, for them, couldn't run the ball. They had 27 carries for 39 yards. They had 3 touchdowns, but it was not a great game. The quarterback, Saga Politelli, had a great game, 24-39, 286 and a touchdown. But man, defense has really struggled in this one. 325 yards of offense for Cal, 476 for Virginia Tech. Both teams picked up a bunch of first downs. Virginia Tech was much more successful on third down, picking up first downs at about 50%. Cal, just over 33%. And the rushing yards was the difference in this one. I mean, Cal almost got outrushed by over 300 yards. It was 357-39, 4 times more yards per carry, and that allowed Virginia Tech to really get back into this game and control it there in overtime. A big win there for the Hokies. They jump up to 3-5 and have shown some life after a tough start to the season. We'll stick around in the Atlantic Coast Conference. We'll hop on over to SMU, who had a big game on the road at Wake Forest, and the Demon Deacons took that one 13-12. surprisingly an ACC game. This was not a Big Ten game. There was almost 600 yards of offense combined, so it was a bit of a slow day. Neither quarterback was very good. Robbie Ashford barely played. Came in and did get a touchdown, and was the only touchdown in this game, I believe. No, there was SMU had one, but listen, this was an ugly one down the stretch. Really all around. Kevin Jennings did not look good. 40 pass attempts and only 171 yards. The running game was bad. 28 carries, 75 yards as a team. Chris Johnson Jr. didn't get much going. TJ Harden obviously didn't get much going, and it was tough for them to really get any semblance of offense. Damon Claiborne was all right. 23 rushes for 73 yards. They were going to be stubborn with him running the football. But listen, Wake Forest had a chance to win it at the end, and then gets to SMU where all they needed was a first down to win it, and then turns it back over to Wake Forest. I believe it was a punt, but gives it back to Wake Forest, and a 50-yard field goal from Connor Calvert, and listen, it was a kick that was good from 50 and would not have been good from 51. That thing went through and still hit the back post, holding up the back field goal post. So just a great kick, big win for Wake Forest. They're 5-2 on the season now, so definitely keep an eye out on the Demon Deacons. And we'll take a look real quick at the ACC standings because they're all over the place. Right now you have two undefeateds, Georgia Tech and Virginia. Don't believe they play each other. No, they don't play each other in the during the regular season. So both of these teams are just at a point, Georgia Tech and Virginia, where they can just win out. Virginia has Cal, Wake, Duke, and Virginia Tech remaining. Georgia Tech has NC State, Boston College, and Pitt. So it looks very likely that could happen, and it's going to be crazy that at that point you're almost looking at a 3-bid league for the ACC. And now Miami is at a point where they were the number 2 team in the country just a couple of weeks ago, where if they fumble a game down the stretch that they shouldn't, like in SMU next week, they have NC State in a couple weeks after that, and then Pitt to close the season. There's been games where Miami has had a chance to go to the playoff and lost it to Pitt, and this is a much better Pitt team than those have been. So, there's a realistic point where we don't have a Miami in the playoff, and there's still 2 ACC teams there because Virginia's 7-1, folks. While they have almost sold the game 2 weeks in a row, just barely getting over North Carolina in overtime, 17-16 on a failed 2-point conversion attempt by the Tar Heels. They're still 7-1 overall. They're still 4-0 in conference play. And funny enough, they've lost a game to NC State. That's their only loss, and it's not a conference game because that was one of those games where Virginia had that game from Indiana, or from Indiana dropped. NC State had a game dropped as well, so they were allowed to sign and play a non-conference game. So Virginia, benefit of the doubt, helping them out big time right there, and the ACC could get really, really weird in the weeks to come. The Sunflower Showdown. Well, the streak goes to 17. Kansas State 42, Kansas 17. Just an all-around bad game for Kansas. Kansas State fumbles the opening kickoff. Kansas scores a couple plays later and then gets outscored 42-10 after that. I think Lance Leipold has probably hit his ceiling at Kansas, and with this being the last year of Jalen Daniels, I would believe. He's been in college for, it feels like, forever at this point. With this being presumably his last year at Kansas, you wonder if Lance Leipold is looking at some of these jobs opening up across the country. He could stay in conference and go to an Oklahoma State. He could go elsewhere. There's an Arkansas job that's open that might not be as sold on Bobby Petrino as you think. So at 61, it's not going to be a long-term hire anywhere, but I don't see why he couldn't be one of these head coaches' names getting thrown around. He's a great head coach. He's just at Kansas. Chris Kleiman, on the other hand, his team is finally coming to shape. Had that rough start to the year. You lose in Ireland. You come home and you lose to Army. Just an all-around not great start to the season. But hey, 3 to 4 weeks later, they're looking good again. 4-4 on the season, and you look at that and you're like, well, that's not impressive. This was supposed to be a team competing for a Big 12 championship, potentially a playoff spot. Well, this team started 1-3, and that one win was over an FCS team that by 3 points. Went over big, but then a big win over UCF. They lose a close one to Baylor, but get a big one to TCU. Get a big win over Kansas, and now 4-4 looking down Texas Tech coming up on Saturday. That should be a fun one. We'll talk about that one later in the week. BYU getting a big win in Ames, 41-27. Listen, BYU just knows how to win football games this year, and I don't think Bear Bachmeier is getting nearly the amount of respect that he deserves this year for just what he's done. Because you look at BYU in the summer, obviously didn't have crazy high expectations, but were one of those last teams out of the playoff last year, and they returning your quarterback. You have great running game, a great receivers, a pretty good defense, and then the drama and the controversy unfolds with Jake Retzlaff. He leaves BYU, goes to Tulane, and now you're stuck with the freshman quarterback that wears the number 47, and he's gone out this year and done nothing but throw for 1,700 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and then 400 more yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground. That's 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and just over 2,000, 2,100 yards total. I mean, that's just impressive. Just put it like that. I mean, a freshman doing all this. I know we talk about some sophomores and some juniors working on that clutch gene. This kid's got it as a freshman. And BYU, they do have a bit of a tough schedule ahead of them. They still have Texas Tech remaining. They still got TCU, Cincinnati on there as well. And those, have a bye week this week, but those the next 3 weeks out of that bye week. So we'll really see what BYU's made of down the stretch. Iowa State's just beat up. And that's really the only way to look at it. Had a great start to the season, but then the injuries started piling up, and then in this one, Rocco Beck throws 3 interceptions. And you look at the stats, and Rocco Beck 24-36, 311 yards and a touchdown, 3 interceptions. Carson Hansen 16 carries, 152 yards and 2 touchdowns. You look at that, and and I believe he lost a fumble as well. You look at that and it looks so good, but they just, it feels like they used all their energy up in the first half. I mean, it was 24-17 at Iowa State at halftime, and then get outscored 24-3 in the second half. Just not a great game there. Huge game for the BYU defense, forcing 3 interceptions when your secondary was that depleted. You got more than 125 yards from both Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston. Bachmeier goes over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. BYU's good, folks. They're probably a lock for the playoff almost at this point. At least at their current spot. We'll definitely find out more about them down the stretch if they can. This all depends on how they look against Texas Tech, because Utah and Houston, some of these other good teams in the Big 12, looked really good in every game except Texas Tech. Arizona State upset Texas Tech a week ago, so they're sitting at 7-1, and we don't really know what to think about them. Because right now they're in a bit of a quarterback discrepancy. They had 2 really good ones going into the year, Will Hammond, Baron Morton. They're both done. Hammond, I believe, is done for the year. Morton is probable to come back. So they're going to be relying on a freshman. So Texas Tech may not be the dangerous team we thought they were, and that could completely turn this conference into a one-bid league. You have Cincinnati slip up to BYU. And right now, if BYU wins out, I think that at that point, you're looking at a one-bid league for the Big 12, which is crazy because you have all these one-loss teams that have to play each other down the stretch. So it could be some crazy stuff coming up in the Big 12. One of those teams contending, Cincinnati, a big win at home against Baylor, 41-20. Cincinnati continues to handle their business against teams that they should. Did it last week against Oklahoma State, doing it this week against Baylor. and they controlled the clock, the pace, the ground game, everything in this game against Baylor, and that's what Baylor has struggled against this year. We saw Jackson Arnold have an outstanding game on the ground against them to start the year for Auburn. But you look at it as a whole. Cincinnati did not throw the ball very well, but Brendan Sorsby, Toy Walker, Evan Pryor, those guys combined for 43 carries, 235 yards, and that's 5.5 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns, and that was the difference in this one. And it allowed Cincinnati to have possession for 35 minutes, which doesn't even give Baylor really much time to warm up. Sawyer Robertson only threw 26 passes in this game for 137 yards, 2 touchdowns. Baylor tried to get the run game going, but this one, I mean, it was 24-6 at halftime. This is one of those where you kind of just kiss it goodbye. And if Cincinnati can control the ground game like this in every game down the stretch, looking at their schedule, they got Utah this week, coming up this week with College Game Day there. That could be really exciting. That one's on the road. Arizona, BYU, TCU. So another team that doesn't have an easy go of it down the stretch, but. If they make their way through that with only one loss, and it's not to Utah, they could be playing for that Big 12 title game. And remember how much fun that one was last year with, I believe it was Iowa State and Arizona State. I mean, that one was a crazy game for that last playoff spot. But Cincinnati looks really, really good. Houston getting a big win, 24-16 over Arizona State. I cannot figure out this Sun Devil team. They're without Sam Leavitt. They lose on the road, get destroyed by Utah, and then they come back the next week and get a big win at home over Texas Tech, the number 1 team in the Big 12 at that point. And you're like, well, okay, surely they're going to beat Houston because, 1, it's at home again, and 2, Houston played Texas Tech at Houston and lost by 24 points. There's no way Arizona State loses this game. And then Houston was up 24-0 going into the final quarter. Just an outstanding game. Willie Fritz has done an amazing job with this team. Houston's 7-1, folks, and they're ranked 22 in the country. We'll get to that with the AP poll in a little bit. They're tied for 3rd right now in the, I guess technically 4th in the Big 12 since they don't have that tiebreaker with Texas Tech. But listen, a win versus Cincinnati, or Cincinnati catches a loss down the stretch, and Houston wins out. With West Virginia, UCF, TCU, and Baylor left out, that is very likely that Houston is a 1-loss, 2-loss team going into the last weekend. If BYU and Houston went out, it's a Houston-BYU Big 12 championship game. How crazy does that sound in 2025? I don't think anybody would have picked either one of those teams, much less both of them. It's the strangest outcome in my eyes. Houston has just not looked good against ranked teams this year and have really scraped together some ugly wins. But listen, they played that slow, sluggish brand of football, did the Cougars, and it benefited them greatly. Controlled the time of possession, 37 minutes to 22 minutes. You look at Connor Wigman, 21 carries, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's a bulk of your yards. But then you got Dean Connors, 20 carries for 48 yards, and you're like, well, that's 2.5 yards a carry. Well, do that 4 times, that's a first down. And you can do that all night around the clock. That's exactly what they wanted out of Connors, and that's exactly what they got out of Connors. We'll take a quick look. Once again, we've kind of been talking about it, but these Big 12 standings, right now you got BYU at 5-0 in the conference and Cincinnati at 5-0. They have to play each other in the regular season, so one of those teams will have a loss, which shakes things up because you have Texas Tech and Houston each with 1 loss. Utah State, Arizona State, Kansas State, TCU all with 2 losses, and those are good teams in their own right. And then you have some teams like even Iowa State or Arizona, despite having 3 conference losses, can pull off some weird stuff. Right now, the Big 12 is probably going to be a 2-bid league, but they do need to watch out with these teams beating up on each other because, that's going to happen in every conference, but you can't do it too much to the point where you're not going to have any teams other than your champion in the playoff because everybody else is going to be 10-2 or 9-3. We'll hop on over to the Big Ten with Northwestern and Nebraska. Cornhuskers getting a big win there, 28-21, and Nebraska is starting to figure things out, folks. I think they might almost have it. They're 6-2, just outside the top 25 this week. And you look, and that was a 7-point win at home against Northwestern. It should have been much worse than that. But you look at how their defense played. Preston Stone, 159 yards, 2 picks, had no air game going. Caleb Komalafi had a great game on the ground, 17 carries, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But other than him, nothing going. And you look at Nebraska's pass game. It was not good in this game, and you knew it wasn't going to be good. Northwestern has one of the best secondaries in the country. It was going to come down to your run game. We saw Katron Allen have a big game last week against Northwestern. A couple weeks ago against Northwestern, ended up coming up in a loss, but still a bunch of yards. Emmett Johnson, who had a terrible game last week against Minnesota, comes back 27 carries, 128 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That was the difference in this one. The 2 interceptions also played a pretty big factor. And Nebraska got down, or Northwestern was down 21-6 right before half. They did end up getting a touchdown going into the half, it was 7-6 at the end of the first half. It was 21-6 halfway, getting to the end of the third quarter. Northwestern had a chance, but you had two second half interceptions that resulted in 2 Nebraska touchdowns. That's the difference. You take away those interceptions, maybe get a scoring drive out of it. You're looking at a 28-14 win. And then you're Northwestern, you're 6-2, you're 4-1 in the Big Ten. Now you've kind of fallen back to reality. You need one more win for a bowl game. And looking at your conference schedule going down the slate, you're going to have to earn it. Northwestern has USC, Michigan, Minnesota, and Illinois remaining. So they're going to have to earn that. They've gotten some of their, I guess you could say, easier games. I mean, I don't want to say it's easier when you had Oregon and I get they've struggled, but even Penn State on the early half of that schedule. Now I bet you're wishing that you had that game against Tulane back, probably. Looking forward, UCLA. Speaking of the Bruins, they had to go to Bloomington this weekend, and from the score of things, they're going to wish they didn't. 56-6 Indiana, getting a big win. Listen, Kurt Cignetti gets his guys ready to play. There is no doubt about that at all, and even when there's a slight Cinderella team like UCLA coming in, he beats them like a drum. I mean, they were favored by 25. Thinking leading up to last Friday's show, I thought that they would have had a better chance of doubling their spread than losing, but I thought that 50 is outrageous. There's no way they win by that much, and they did. This one was over from the first play. Nico throws a pick six. Indiana up 7-0 at that point. UCLA only scored 6 points. They had a field goal in the second quarter, a field goal in the third quarter. That pick six literally was the difference in this game. At that point, you could win with only that pick six. It wasn't the difference. There was about 6 more touchdown difference in this one. It's just bad from UCLA. 25 carries, didn't even 88 yards. So you're getting a little over 3 yards a carry. Nico had 2 picks, under 50% completion percentage. Fernando Mendoza continues to. I hate to say he continues to solidify his Heisman rate with 168 yards and 3 touchdowns and a pick, but his stats look good. He's got 24 pass touchdowns already this year, and this is an Indiana team that ran for 4 in this game. So Mendoza, him and his brother Fernando and Alberto both with a rushing touchdown at about 40 yards. So yeah, they took over control of this one early. It was 35-3 at halftime. And UCLA's probably come back down to earth. Indiana, on the other hand, they might be the best team in the country. We won't see them play Ohio State until presumably the Big Ten championship game. There could be some weird stuff that happens between now and then that could change that. Like a Michigan win over Ohio State. It's happened like the last, 4 years now? Just saying, it could get interesting. For the Big Ten, Illinois goes on the road and gets thumped by Washington, 42-25. I came in here later last week and I thought Washington was soft. I really did. Their only chances to prove that they were a tough team against other tough teams not come up well. Well, it did right here. A big win over Illinois, and it was one of those that was kind of over from the start, and then the second half just solidified it even more. Luke Altmaier, a 2-interception game. He's got 3 on the year now. He's thrown them in his last 2 games. Is Illinois falling off? Because they don't have much of a rushing attack. Caden Fagan, Khalil Valentine, neither one of them really got much going on the ground. And props to Tacario Davis. Absolutely locked up Hank Beatty. He only had 73 yards in this one, did not get a touchdown. And that's a guy, Hank Beatty, that's got almost 700 yards this year. And Damon Williams, though, 346 total yards, 4 touchdowns. That'll do. 26-33. That's really good completion percentage, close to 80%. Jonah Coleman had a great game on the ground. 14 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. Also caught a touchdown from wide receiver Denzel Boston, who also, on top of throwing a touchdown, had 10 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown himself. Desmond Roebuck had a great game, 2 touchdowns for him. And it was all Huskies in this one. Illinois going to have to figure some things out down the stretch with Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Northwestern left on the schedule. They should be able to win out and go 9-3. I don't know how to diagnosed this year for Illinois in the fact that I thought they could be a playoff team coming into the year, and they looked that way all the way up to week 4 when they faced Indiana. After that, I was like, well, their season's done. They fell from 9 to 23. You get a win against USC. Okay, I think USC's a pretty good team. That might be a good win. Get the win over Purdue. You show some semblance against Ohio State. You had your last chance to kind of stake your name in the playoff with a win over Washington, and you lose that one. Tough break for Illinois, but they still have a lot to fight for this season. And you got a quarterback that's thrown for over 2,000 yards through your first 8 games of the season. So, you got a guy on pace for 3,000 passing yards. That's something that doesn't happen for everybody every year. So, I think you kind of just take it where you can get it. Your run game was a bit disappointing this year. Now you wonder if Josh McCray would have stayed, how much that would have changed things. Because you look at what he's done in Athens for the Georgia Bulldogs. I think maybe he wishes that he stayed. Because you look, he is buried in a running back room where he's only gotten 32 carries this year for 87 yards and 3 touchdowns. I believe 2 of those came against Tennessee. So in one game. Yes, he had 2 touchdowns against Tennessee, 1 against Alabama. Has done really nothing since then. Has not totaled more than 25 yards in a game all season. Yeah, the transfer portal works in mysterious ways. The last game of the day for the Big Ten, Minnesota and Iowa. Big rivalry game, and Iowa made it look like it wasn't one at all. 41-3, Hawkeyes get the win. Hey, they were favored by 8.5. The over-under was 38.5. I didn't think it would get there. I didn't think over-under. And listen, Iowa has been dominant in this series, typically in close games. But since Kirk Ferentz took over in 1999, he's 20-7 against the Gophers, and he lost his first 2. So really 20-5 since Iowa got rolling there in the early 2000s. Now I'm gonna give Iowa's defense a ton of credit here. Minnesota had more rushing attempts than they had rushing yards. Drake Lindsey threw 3 interceptions. Minnesota had 39 yards in the first half. That's going to win you most games. And then I guess you could say it relinquished. They gave up some points, but it was just dominance from start to finish. Iowa in this game scored a rushing, a passing, a special teams, and a defensive touchdown. Just an all-around great game. Iowa 6-2. Keep an eye on the Hawkeyes because not sure if they'll make any noise playoff-wise coming out of the Big Ten, but they're definitely one to keep an eye on just because it's Iowa. Their defense has slowed down teams like Indiana this year. It's slowed down, and now you wonder if Iowa State had those injuries earlier in the year that maybe Iowa would have one loss right now and probably be a top 15 team. They got a bye week and then Oregon. If you win that one, we may have to start talking because you got Oregon, USC, Michigan State, and Nebraska down the stretch. Tough games, all against maybe Michigan State, but they've been a little iffy this year. I think Iowa is a much better version of what Northwestern's trying to be. Northwestern caused some problems for Oregon. It was a 34-14 game week 2, week 3, but Oregon did not look good in that game. It was not great weather, and this one's going to be at Kinnick Stadium, so that's going to be a fun one to talk about in about a week and a half from now. Taking a look real quick at the Big Ten standings, though, is right now I don't know if I can find this team for more than a 3-bid team. Indiana and Ohio State perfect in conference play. A collection of one-loss teams in conference play. Iowa, Michigan, USC. With USC having 2 losses right now, and one of them being to an unranked team, one of them being to Notre Dame. I would say they're probably out. Michigan's still alive. Iowa probably still alive. And I believe Iowa, I did say they play Michigan State, not Michigan. So, they got Oregon. They could knock them out. And I don't think this is a 4-bid league. I think it's 3. But you knock Oregon down in 2 weeks, and you could be looking at 4, which would be a disaster for the SEC because that means that out of Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Vanderbilt, one of those teams isn't going to make it because you're going to have 2 teams from the Big 12, probably 2 from the ACC. You got to have the one group of 5, and then that's 5 spots right there. You got a 7 between 2 leagues, and both probably need 4. It's not going to happen. Going to the SEC now, talking about that Ole Miss team, they got a huge win on the road in Norman against the Oklahoma Sooners, 34-26. Oklahoma was favored in this one, and everything that you know about football told you they should have won this one. Still can't push the ball down the field. That's where Georgia made their hay, so to speak, with Ole Miss last week, was pushing the ball down the field. Mateer still can't get it there, and so it's forcing him to throw short passes and make his receivers get a bunch of yards after catch. Isaiah Sategna had a great game in this one, but still, and they couldn't run the ball other than the long touchdown from Xavier Robinson. So, you have concerns about Oklahoma's offense. A couple of weeks ago, this team was number 5 in the country. You beat Kent State, number 6 going into the Red River rivalry. Texas had come off a loss against Florida, and you just lay an egg against Texas. Your defense did not look good. You go on the road to South Carolina. You play a pretty down South Carolina team, but you handle business. And then you're at home, Ole Miss. You got probably a playoff spot on the line, because you look at your games down the stretch, you probably want to win this one. Discussing some of the games they have on the road later, because their next 2 weeks they're on the road, or their next 2 games coming in the next 3 weeks. You got Tennessee at night this week. You got Bama will probably be at night if you win that Tennessee game in 2 weeks. So it's definitely a rough look for Oklahoma. Mateer once again, just above 50% passing, 200 yards, a touchdown, nothing on the ground. You take away that 65-yard touchdown run. They had 70 yards on 27. 70? Would that be 71 yards on 27 carries? Just 3 yards a touch. Not going to be good. That's really all you can say about Oklahoma. They had the best defense in the league coming into it. Chambliss, completion percentage wasn't great, but he looked good. 24, 44, 315 and a touchdown. Had 53 more yards on the ground. Quan Lacey, 2 touchdowns on 27 carries. He was a bulldog, absolutely. And a big win for Ole Miss. They're 7-1, and looking at their games left on the schedule: South Carolina, Citadel, Ole Miss, or Florida, and then at Mississippi State. You got 3 straight home games, and then Mississippi State to close out the season, coming off a bye week. Ole Miss is going 11-1 and going to the playoff. Will probably be hosting a spot. Could have a chance to play in the SEC championship game. We'll look at the SEC standings after this, because they are a absolute mess right now. Because the right teams aren't beating up on the right teams. We'll just put it that way. Auburn. I thought that this was going to be like Hugh Freeze's last game as a head coach. He finally took Jackson Arnold out of the game. Arkansas, their defense continues to amaze me week after week in how terrible they are. I mean, this is a historically bad defense. And it makes you feel bad for their offense, in the sense that if you have the game where Taylor Green has a fumble and a pick, or 2 picks, or 2 fumbles, has a multi-turnover game, he had 3 in this one, interceptions, they stand no chance, because at that point, you've given Auburn 3 extra possessions. And those 3 extra possessions, they were only 9 points better. Auburn was a field goal team today. They scored 1 offensive touchdown. They scored 33 points, 1 offensive touchdown. Had 1 on defense. And you feel bad for them, so to speak. And I'm talking about Arkansas, because they're so close. If they had half the defense let's just look at a middle-of-the-road SEC team. If they had Missouri's defense, they would probably have 1 loss right now, maybe 2. I think they still lose to Notre Dame, but other than that, they have wins over Ole Miss, they have wins over Tennessee, they have wins over Texas A&M. I mean, they're this close to those teams, and then just absolutely, you get beat by 2 possessions at home against Auburn. I get the weather was terrible, so it wasn't going to allow you to throw the ball, which played a bit into the favor of Auburn, because they can't throw a forward pass to save their life. But yeah, the Jackson Arnold experience is over at Auburn, and looky there, you take a guy out of a game that's lost you 4 straight conference games and didn't win many at his school last year, and you win a game, and you weren't winning when they took him out. You were down 21-10 at halftime. Come out of the second half. Ashton Daniels is your guy. 6'8", 77 yards. They weren't going to air the ball out much in that weather. Jeremiah Cobb was a workhorse. 28 carries, 153 yards. Jackson Arnold had the 23-yard touchdown pass to Cam Coleman. That was your 1 offensive touchdown. listen, if I'm going to give a MVP in this game, it's going to Alex McPherson. 6 for 6 field goals in the rain. One of them coming from 47. He scored 19 points in this one. He almost single-handedly outscored Arkansas. So a great win for the Tigers. Finally get an SEC win and finally maybe get them some semblance of some good things going. And, they'll have a chance to get another one at home against Kentucky next week, a game that was their only conference win last year. Missouri and Vanderbilt, the college game day one, kind of a dud of a game, to be honest. I was expecting a little bit more up and down, a little bit more offense, and we got a glorified Big Ten game. Vanderbilt continues to find ways to win these games, though, because if you watched that game, they should not have won it. Missouri was better as a team. Just like as a whole, yards wise, first downs wise, they were better. And we saw that happen last week with Kentucky and Texas. Kentucky played way better than Texas, and Texas won the game. For Missouri, 9 more first downs. You were getting 4 for 5 on fourth down. More than 110 more yards, 111 more yards than Vanderbilt, 80 more through the air. You threw less interceptions. You were getting a little bit less than they were on the ground, but you had 40 more yards. Only 5 more penalty yards, same amount of penalties. You had the ball for 36 minutes, and you lost the ball game. Oh, what a mouthful. I've seen that Vanderbilt's has been pushing this Diego Pavia Heisman campaign, which most schools will do if you have a kid that's a candidate, but I don't see it. He has 1,700 passing yards on the year. We'll look up his totals for the year. 458 yards on the ground, 1,700 yards through the air, so about 2,250 in the passing in yardage wise. 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. We'll see if he has any. Don't believe he may have a fumble or a couple of fumbles. I'm not sure how many exactly he has on the year. Because they wouldn't want me to see those, would they? Do not see any fumble stats, but I know he had the one against Alabama, so probably. So you're looking at a guy with 20 touchdowns and 7 or 8 turnovers on the year. Yeah, if you took him off, I look at the Heisman as the most valuable player in college football, and if you took Diego Pavia off Vanderbilt and gave them a run-of-the-mill quarterback, say a Brendan Sorsby, well, he's having a really good year. I don't know, a Robbie Ashford, maybe somebody a little better, somewhere around a Kevin Jennings, maybe. Vanderbilt's probably 5-3 right now, maybe. They probably lose that game to LSU, and they probably lose this game to Missouri. I don't think they lose any of those other games. Maybe a bit closer, but I don't know. I'm not buying the Pavia Heisman hype when when he's 7th in his own conference in passing yards. It's I don't know. And he's below 70% completion percentage now. He's much better than he was a year ago. He's at almost 70% this year, and is their team's leading rusher. Is almost their team's leading touchdown guy on the ground, just behind Cedric Alexander. But I will tell you, Vanderbilt is a really good team, and with their schedule coming up, you got Texas this weekend. If you win that one, you're in the playoff. It doesn't matter if you lose to Tennessee last week of the game. Last week of the season, it probably doesn't. If you win this one, you're in. But it's at Texas. Texas had their best offensive game of the year last week. And, despite holding Missouri to 10 points, he gave up 376 yards of offense. Texas just had their best offensive game of the year. Those aren't adding up. And you let LSU look a little better the week before. Watch out if you're Vanderbilt. Tough one on the week. Tough one on the road this week at Texas. Zollers looked really good for a true freshman for a freshman on the road against the top 10 team. So if Prbula is out the rest of the regular season, I don't think Missouri's in terrible shape. Don't think they're going to a playoff though. They got games that they will probably lose down the stretch, and they can't afford to lose anymore. They probably couldn't afford to lose those two. They were going to have to be a one-loss team in the playoff because they had a very beneficial schedule. Eli Drinkwitz went full Auburn after the game and complaining about calls going against him when both teams had the exact same amount of penalties and his team had 5 more penalty yards. I don't think it was one of those calls going against you, but I think you got to the red zone several times and only put up 10 points. So at that point, be mad at your team or your play calling, or your offensive coordinator, Kirby Moore. Don't blame it on the refs, because there were plenty of calls in that one where there were close calls. I remember there was a fumble that I thought was, I think it was on Pavia's interception, actually, that I thought looked like a fumble, the ball back to Vanderbilt, and that call stayed with Missouri. You didn't score off that possession, but you had opportunities. So, yeah, not a great look for Missouri, but Vanderbilt, they're a serious top 10 team. I will give them that. And the team they will face Saturday, Texas, had a tough game on the road at Mississippi State. When they were down 38-21 with 9 minutes to go, they won that one 45-38 in overtime. In the same realm as Mississippi State, same realm as Arkansas, Mississippi State's defense continues to amaze me each week at how bad they are. Arch went for almost 350. Their run and 3 touchdowns, which is awful. He hasn't done remotely anything near that shows he could do that against an SEC team this year, and he did on the road. The run defense looked really good, though. C.J. Baxter was back for Texas, and him and Weisner did not get much of a run game going. And you feel bad for Mississippi State. They get that emotional win, the come from behind, the late touchdown win against Arizona State, and since then, just week after week in conference play, he's gotten their hearts ripped out. Tennessee at home, overtime loss. You play in a close game in the first half at Texas A&M, loss. You have the ball at the 29-yard line, down 2 against Florida with under a minute to go, you lose. You're up by 17 points in the fourth quarter against Texas, and you lose. Listen, their offense is good. Their pass game was awesome. Blake Shapen, around 380 yards, I believe. I believe that is correct. Let me pull up stats, and I apologize for the stats being a little slow today. The ESPN app is having a rough go of it today. Blake Shapen, 381 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air. Devon Booth, 24 carries, 99 yards on the ground. He had 85 yards and a touchdown through the air. So, that's 184 yards and a touchdown right there. It was the defense and the special teams. You give up that late punt return. You give up 24 fourth quarter points to Texas. You deserve to lose. I hate to say it, but Mississippi State could easily be 6-2 right now, and looking like one of the contenders for a sneaky playoff dark horse. And now they're 4-4, wondering what went wrong after they went 4-0. The game of the night on ABC, Texas A&M handled business and sent Brian Kelly packing 49-25. Brian Kelly was fired Sunday morning. I didn't know if he would be the next SEC coach to go. I think it's crazy that you fire him just to how successful he had been as a whole. But it was a job that didn't fit from the start. And what a way to go. At home in front of your own fans, getting your butt whooped by your former defensive coordinator at Notre Dame and Mike Elko, and by former LSU strength and conditioning coach Tommy Moffitt, who you fired after 20-plus years at LSU, who had won 3 different national championships with 3 different coaching staffs across that decade, or across those 2 decades. So, you know what? I think what a way to go. On the field, though, LSU's defense did their thing in the first half. Held A&M to 14 points, gave them some extra points with the safety, some extra possessions with the interceptions, and they only scored 18 points in the first half. And then we're just absolutely destroying the second half, 35-7. And A&M took over Death Valley at night. I mean, these are things we don't see. Insane. Marcel Reed took over this game again like he did last year, and this year we get to see a full game out of him. 310 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's a guy that needs to be in the Heisman talks. If we're talking about an SEC quarterback needing to be in the Heisman conversation that might not be, it's Marcel Reed. And I think he should be in there. Big time. I mean, his stats are much better. And Texas A&M, guys, is 8-0. This is a team that gets the 8-4 jokes all the time. If they win next week, those are over. Worst they can do this year is 9-3, and I don't think that's going to happen with some of the teams they have remaining on their schedule. We'll take a look at their schedule just real quick to see who they have remaining. They got the okay, so Missouri in 2 weeks, so they got a bye week. At Missouri, home versus South Carolina, home versus Samford, at Texas. That's very winnable. Very, very winnable schedule for Texas A&M. And the last game in the SEC, Tennessee 56, Kentucky 34. Both of these teams' secondary coaches need to be fired. The pass games were awesome for both teams. Pass defense was terrible for both teams. I thought the rush defense was all right for both teams. It was a very similar game. Tennessee just had a pick six and a fumble that landed them on the 5-yard line, and that was pretty much the 2 extra possessions that they got, and were 2 extra possessions that Kentucky didn't get. I think if those teams would have played all night, it would have been back and forth touchdowns. Joey Aguilar goes for 396 and 3 touchdowns. Tennessee has 3 receivers go north of 100 yards. That's the first time they've done that in 6 years. That was a road game against Missouri in 2019. Listen, Tennessee has the best offense in the SEC, probably one of the 2 or 3 best in the country. The problem is they have not worst, because Arkansas is still in this conference, the second worst defense in the SEC. They're down there with Ole Miss and total points allowed. If you look at points allowed, Arkansas is the last with 262. Then it's Tennessee with 247, and then there's a gap all the way to 211 with Kentucky. And you even look at Ole Miss. Texas A&M's giving up more points than Ole Miss. So maybe I'm going a little hard on Ole Miss's defense for blowing that game against Georgia last week. But there's defenses like Oklahoma's only given up 100 points this year. Now, Tennessee scored 365. That's a game coming up Saturday. That's the most in the SEC other than... Texas A&M's at 302. Arkansas's only at 284. So Tennessee has the best offense in the SEC by far and the second worst defense. Oklahoma has the best defense and one of the worst offenses. They've scored more points than Florida, a little more than LSU, Auburn, Carolina, Kentucky, these bad offenses. And Kentucky scored like a fifth of their team's points in one game against Tennessee. So it could be a fun one coming up on Saturday night in Knoxville. Taking a look at the SEC standings. 2 teams perfect in conference play. One of them perfect overall, A&M, Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss, Vandy, Texas with 1 conference loss. Looking overall at Vanderbilt, their defense has been the best in the SEC in conference play points-wise, only giving up 71 points. They've only scored 93. So definitely going to want to get some more points going, because you look at the teams around them. A&M in conference play, 175 points. Bama in conference play, 147. Georgia, 163. Ole Miss, 164. Tennessee, 192. And then Texas and Vandy at 105 and 93 respectively. Now, their defenses are great, only allowing 71 and 86 points each. It's going to take some work, though, for both of those teams if they want to make the playoff. There's a host of two lost teams in the SEC, and there's probably only going to be room for maybe 2 in the playoff. Missouri, Texas, and Tennessee, the 2 lost teams, along with Oklahoma. Those teams play each other down the stretch, so they're going to knock each other out. But yeah, the SEC is getting incredibly crazy with how good they've been down the stretch. On to the other games from the Group of 5 and FCS. USF has blown their absolute playoff chances with a loss to Memphis 34-31. That one in Memphis at the Liberty Bowl. Memphis got a huge bounce back win, and they're still alive in the playoff hunt, and they'll have to earn it. They got Navy left on their schedule. I believe they got Tulane as well. Memphis has an incredibly hard schedule. They have a win over an SEC team. Now, it is Arkansas, but a win over an SEC team is still a win over an SEC team. So, yeah, their last 4 games, they got Tulane and Navy, both of them at home, so they'll have an opportunity to win it, to win those games and really solidify themselves as that Group of 5 playoff contender. And Byron Brown goes for 390 yards and 3 touchdowns. It comes up a little bit short, and USF's playoff hopes are almost certainly dashed. And I don't think we saw them as a playoff contender heading into the year. They had tough games with Florida, Miami on the schedule in the non-con, and you beat Florida, and then all the hype comes in. You impress with wins over North Texas. You have that loss to Miami. You hope they aren't going to get punished too much for this second loss, but a 2-loss Group of 5 team will probably not make the playoff. A team that could make the playoff got a big win on Saturday night, 23-0. San Diego State 6-1 on the year. Pretty much finished off Fresno State in that conference. They've dropped to 5-3. Aztecs had a struggling, handed that struggling Fresno State team their third loss. Quarterback play has been a struggle for Fresno State. Warner, who wasn't great, goes out. The backup hadn't been much better. If they continue on this pace with the American, kind of eating themselves alive as they have been, San Diego State's got a shot to be the Group of 5 team in the field. Also, they're undefeated in conference. Also undefeated in conference is a Boise State team that, we kind of forgot about after week 1. They have 2 losses though, so I think right now your best chances for a Group of 5 team: Memphis, maybe Tulane, maybe Navy, or San Diego State. In the FCS, you had number 1 versus number 2, San Diego State or South Dakota State and North Dakota State. The Bison, North Dakota State take this one 38-7. South Dakota State was already going to be in a pretty big hole to start with, and then Chase Mason, their quarterback, was being out, kind of finished off any little bit of hope that he had remaining. This one was over early. It was 31-7 at halftime. And Cole Payton, quarterback for North Dakota State, 380 total yards, 4 touchdowns, almost 80% completion percentage. A big win for North Dakota State. And this week, folks, was a rough week for picks for me. 8-11, first time this season below 500. It's a rough week. I mean, I'm not disappointed in any of these picks other than maybe Kansas. I picked SMU over Wake Forest. That seemed like an easy win. Maybe not an easy win, but one that they should have won. Kansas, that was probably a dumb pick. They've lost 16 in a row. You're going to lose 17 in a row. Next year, we'll work on getting Kansas State the Kansas State streak a voter registration card. BYU over Iowa State. I figured Iowa State could have a chance to get a big upset win at home. I do not feel bad for picking Arizona State. They should not have lost. Northwestern, maybe. Illinois, I guess hindsight, that was a dumb pick. Oklahoma, Ole Miss's defense had showed no sign of stopping any offense, and I figured Oklahoma had just enough to get it done, especially with their defense. Arkansas should not have lost that game. Texas should not have beat Mississippi State. The LSU one was dumb. But really, other than that, I don't feel bad for too many of these picks. We just had a great week of football. We'll take a look real quick at the AP poll, and it's a good one this week. We're starting to kind of, I guess, feel things out as we get closer to our first playoff rankings. We'll start going over those on our Wednesday shows when those start coming out. Newly in at 25 for their second time this year, Memphis made it back in. Utah in at 24. USC back in at 23. Houston at 22 at 7-1. Michigan up 4 spots to 21. Texas up 2 spots to 20. Missouri drops 4 spots following their loss to 19. Oklahoma drops 5 spots to 18. Cincinnati already up to 17. Louisville up to 16. Virginia at 15. I would have put Cincinnati above Louisville and Virginia, especially just from what we've seen from those teams as of late. I mean, Louisville struggling with BC, Virginia struggling with Washington State and North Carolina. I think Cincinnati's a top 15 team easily. Tennessee at 14. And then a pretty good size gap voter-wise to Texas Tech at 13, Notre Dame at 12. A tie at 10 this week. BYU and Miami both tied at 10. Vanderbilt at 9. Georgia Tech at 8. Ole Miss at 7. And then the top 6 remains the same with Oregon, Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, Indiana, and Ohio State. A pretty close gap between those top 3 teams. A&M got 1 first-place vote this week. Probably should have gotten a little more. It's Ohio State with a comfortable 54 of the I believe 66 first place votes. They're good. Ohio State's really good. Indiana's really good. And Texas A&M is really good. Looking at the top 10's games next week, no game for Oregon. They're off. No game for Alabama. Alabama and A&M are both off as well, as is BYU. So in the top 10, we got a bunch of matchups next week, a bunch of good ones too. So yeah, I mean, we are just getting to the best point of the college football season. You don't know what's going on. You're learning less and less each week. Teams are kind of knocking each other out. So we will be back tomorrow. We are going to talk college basketball tomorrow. We had a bunch of exhibition games over the weekend that are very intriguing. Tennessee hired a new baseball coach. We'll talk about that on Wednesday with Josh Elander. And then we'll look at a new playoff poll, a new Heisman race. We got a bunch of stuff coming up. That will be tomorrow on the X Sports Network. So for Michael Marks, this has been Mark My Words. Have a good day, everybody.
Going the distance with local sports. This is the X Sports Network.